Look at this winter wonderland in the Netherlands. We are in The Hague, the political capital of my country. And I'm on my way to the Korean embassy to do an interview with the Korean ambassador to the Netherlands. Snow makes me happy, especially to see it in the Netherlands, because it's not so common anymore. Not so common as it used to be. We will have a walk with the ambassador through the forest here, ask some questions about his life in the Netherlands and the bilateral relationship between both countries. Join us.
Usually I talk to ambassadors based in South Korea, but this time I wanted to meet the Korean ambassador to the Netherlands. The embassy is housed in a beautiful mansion in The Hague, and on this snowy day we had no choice but to go out for a short walk.
It's such an honor to do this interview with you today.
It's my great honor to be here with this wonderful, very famous YouTube channel, iGoBart.
No.
Really appreciate it.
All right, let's start from the beginning. When did you come to the Netherlands and what was your first impression?
I arrived in the Netherlands May last year. My first impression is really come to the very tall people country. The Dutch is the tallest people in the world. The Dutch people are very straightforward and frank and you know, they're very open.
Did you feel any culture shock?
Yeah, so it's same. In this sense, I'm very impressed by the straightforwardness the Dutch people have. When they think, they do not hide their emotion, they go straightforward and they very often, it is really good thing to minimize the uncertainty or misunderstanding through the clarity and, you know, the efficiency even.
Is it not a little bit scary when they are too honest or too direct?
Yeah, so sometimes I'm worried about being, you know, denied when I ask something to the Dutch people, but I realize that they as well as openness, but also very kind and very considerate to others. So I'm very pleased to work with Dutch people here.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that. When you meet Dutch people for the first time, what do they usually know about South Korea?
South Korea is a very popular country.
These days in the Netherlands too?
Yes.
All right.
So they know about the K-pop and K-drama, K-film. Nowadays, I feel that the interest in Korean food has been growing.
I saw gochujang
in
the supermarket.
Gochujang and doenjang, and also innovative industries such as mobile phone and semiconductor is very popular in the Netherlands.
And I see a lot of Korean cars driving around these days.
Right, exactly.
Hyundai, Kia as well.
Yeah, exactly. Kia is the #1 selling car in the Netherlands.
I know the Dutch cuisine isn't the most famous cuisine in the world, but has there been some Dutch food that you enjoyed?
Really enjoyed trying, you know, the herring. It was a really distinctive flavor. I still remember.
Did you try with the onions and pickle?
Yeah, and then also Gouda cheese.
Oh, Gouda cheese!
Yeah, so not just myself, but many Koreans enjoy the Gouda cheese.
And did you try the oliebollen at New Year's Eve?
Yes.
Like the round?
Yes, and with sugar powder.
Yes.
So the problem is that it is really delicious and very tasty. So I, you know, frightened to lose my dietary
You keep eating them.
Yeah.
And if Dutch people want to experience Korean culture, what is a good place for them to start?
No matter where you are in the world, you can explore the Korea culture very easily. So you can just access the Netflix.
Oh.
Or YouTube. Also, my embassy has been organizing kind of the cultural event called Annual Korean Festival, normally held in Amsterdam.
So last question before we go back inside.
Yeah.
So when Korean people read the journal written by Hendrik Hamel, what do they generally feel? Do they feel that he's like either a victim, an observer, or did he like build a bridge between Korea and Europe?
You have presented all three good answers. He has been a kind of victim, as well as the observer, as well as playing a bridging role to connect Korea and Europe. To my eyes, I see him as not just as a victim, but rather as an observer who, you know, wrote Hamel's journal. This is the first book written on the situation of the Korean society at the time.
Yes.
For those who don't know, Hendrik Hamel is a well-known name in Korea. In 1653, he was a Dutch sailor who shipwrecked on Jeju Island to South Korea. Hamel and the other survivors were not allowed to leave. They stayed in Korea for 13 years until some of them managed to escape, including Hamel, making their way to Japan and eventually back to the Netherlands. Hamel then published his journal. It became the first book to introduce Korea to the Dutch and much of Europe. You can still learn about his story today at the Hamel Museum in Gorinchem. But Hamel wasn't the first Dutchman to end up in Korea. 25 years earlier, another Dutch shipwrecked in Korea. His name was Jan Janse Weltevree, known in Korea as Bak Jan.
When you talk about the Hamel, it reminds me of the Bak Jan. He was the first European gentleman who has become the Korean. He got married with Korean ladies and then he formed his own family. Nowadays, the foreign people who come to Korea to make a contribution to build a better society and better country. In this sense, Bak Jan is a kind of pioneer.
Another thing, every time I introduce myself in Korea, then people sometimes still say, Guus Hiddink. People remember Guus Hiddink. How do you remember Guus Hiddink?
Dutch football coach Guus Hiddink became a legend in South Korea after leading the national team to the semi-finals of the 2002 FIFA World Cup.
I still remember the words after beating Italy and securing the place in quarterfinal.
Yes.
He's saying to the media that I'm still hungry. He awakening the kind of spirit of fighting. He really awakening the Korean sentiment that we can become more responsible country in the world. When I come to the hometown of Guus Hiddink, there was a sign written in Korean. 환영합니다. The welcome.
Really?
Yeah. So
like the Koreans are welcome.
it means many Koreans come to his hometown. Really small town. It shows that how the Korean people regard him as our real hero.
Right now, what connects Korea and the Netherlands?
As far as I know, Korea and Netherlands are closely connected in many ways. Korean perspective on Netherlands is really positive. The Dutch people, they really like Korea. That's why the two governments have agreed to upgrade our relations up to strategic partnership in 2022, and even we have agreed to upgrade alliance in semiconductor areas in 2023.
If you go back to Korea and there's one thing you can bring from the Netherlands, could be anything, could be culture, an item, food, what would it be?
Many things. I really want to bring the stuff to Korea when I back to Korea. The number one is that the sense of design to give the new life to old things. For example, last December when Foreign Ministry has organized the year-end party in Rotterdam, I have been visited some museum, immigration museum. Museum building has transformed from the old warehouse. The Dutch people are really good at transforming the old things to the new one.
The Hague is special to Korea for another reason. In 1907, Korea's Emperor Gojong secretly sent a peace envoy to the Second Peace Conference in The Hague. The goal was simple: to tell the world that Japan had robbed Korea of its independence through the unfair 1905 treaty, and to ask for international help. But sadly, the delegation, led by Yi-jun, was blocked from entering the conference by Japan. A few days later, Yi-jun was found dead in his hotel room in The Hague. Today, that hotel has been turned into the Yi-jun Peace Museum, where the full story is told in much greater detail.
So my first official function was to visit the Yi-jun Peace Museum. Korea has become not just an independent country, but also the nation along with the European countries and then Netherlands to hold the international law and peace. In this sense, I can tell special envoys that your sacrifice was not in vain.
Yeah, we know of course that the Netherlands has also helped Korea during the Korean War. So every year we still commemorate the Korean War veterans. How do you feel about that? Do you think we should keep commemorating foreign Korean War veterans even after their passing?
Very recently, one veteran, when he died, he has left his last wishes to his families that he wants to be buried in Korea. When I heard the story about this, I really feel grateful and overwhelmed. Very emotional. So that's why we need to remember them forever. Not just remember the veteran, but also we need to renew our commitment to save our universal values, not just Korean Peninsula, but beyond.
As a Dutchie living in Korea, it's great to hear both countries get along well and increasingly show more interest in each other, not only economically but also culturally. I guess given its history, The Hague is almost a must visit for Koreans who come to the Netherlands. It's a beautiful city anyways. Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you for watching. Houdoe!